It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. And that's what you have here. That's what you've earned here tonight.
Forget about the crowd. It's the size of the school. Their fancy uniforms. And remember what got you here. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the difference between winning and losing.
It's down to the wire with Errol Marks and Speedy Petey.
Oh, Petey!
On the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Down to the Wire. We are live every single Monday and Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. New York Eastern Time. As you know, the number to call is 631-260-1601 is the phone call to call the show. Remember, you can reach us by going to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't already know, well, I'm going to give you some more information. This is what you do if you want to get in touch with us and watch our shows live, listen to our shows live, look at our stories, check out what we're doing all over the country. This is how you do it. You go on to your iOS if you have an Apple. You put in search WWSRN and download the app, or go to Android and put in Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Speedy Petey, what's going on, my friend?
Had a good day for the most part. Nice out. I didn't get to go outside, unfortunately, because you got to my house pretty early. I was going to hang out outside for a little while, but nice day out. I know you're probably hot, but
it is an absolute sauna outside.
Yeah,
it is so hot, so disgusting outside. I would love to go swimming right now if I wasn't doing a radio show, but I'm here for the fans. I want the fans to kind of interact with us. I want to give a shout out to the Big Guy Sports Show. Great show, boys. Your second show on our network. It was a great show. Great guests, great analysts. I mean, they give you the analytic expectations of what we expect for our radio show. So I want to give a shout out to Jim and his crew and the Big Guy Sports Show. But we have a great show lined up for you guys. At 6:30, we'll be talking to Angels TV broadcaster Jose Mota. And after that, at 7:15, we'll be talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood, who will be joining us as well. So it's going to be a fun show, so definitely stay tuned. Jeff, you are a pain in my rear end with the Yankees cheating, and you have fans. Yes, I have fans, Jeff. I don't know about you. You do have fans, but pain in the butt fans. And that's why they love you, Jeff, and that's why I love you, even though you give me a headache every single time, not only when you call the show, but you interact with us on social media. But nevertheless, we have a great show lined up for you, and we're looking forward to Jose Mota, who's going to be joining us in about 20 minutes. But I want to get into this MLB situation. And it's funny because yesterday we were talking about how the players didn't approve on the 60-game offer by the MLB. And my argument is that the MLB is not trying to push away the season. I think the MLB is trying to work in what the owners want to do and what the players want to do. The players want practically all their money in a 76, 80-game season, and the owners want to give the players no more than 30% of whatever revenue is coming in throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, it seemed like for the most part the salary dispute was the biggest thing, and now it came out that it's probably going to be close to 30 to 40%, some range like that for what the players are going to get for the 60 games. And honestly, I'm surprised the players would have approved of that, because it seems like they've been wanting just above average salaries the entire time. And I'm surprised they were able to do that. It seemed like they didn't necessarily want to play more, but they want to get the good money with how many games they want to play in order to accept the offer. So I'm surprised they went through with this.
Well, again, I look at the players and I look at the MLB, and they're trying to negotiate a deal. I actually talked to Charlie Slows today, the voice of the Washington Nationals, and I asked him, is there going to be an MLB season? And he absolutely believes there's going to be an MLB season. A matter of fact, he's heading to Washington in about a week and a half. So more than likely, this is going to happen. The question is, what are the deals that are going to be put onto the table for not only for the players but the owners, where both sides are going to like the deal? Now, I know a lot of people say that the MLB were acting like a bunch of babies. And some of the players, and we've heard all different players. We've heard Mike Trout. We've heard Harper. We've heard Aaron Judge. We've heard all these different Mookie Betts. They all had their own thoughts of where the league is moving towards. You know, the new CBA is going to be argued about in the next 2 years. And I've been hearing, Charlie actually told me that they're going to implement the DH to the National League possibly with this deal. So that's what I've been hearing. So to me, when you look at the MLB and you look at the expectations of it coming back, you talk about the NBA, you talk about the NHL, they're coming back sometime mid-July, at the end of July. You talk about the NFL. Everything that we've heard with the NFL is they are coming back. OTAs will be starting sometime in July, and players will be reporting to the facilities.
Yeah, it seems like what the MLB is going to do is they want to have a plan where they get everybody into spring training facilities July 1st around, and then their projected start date, if they do go through with this, the 60 games, would be July 24th, from what I heard.
I am reading David Schoenfield. He actually is an ESPN senior writer that wrote this. It appears that there is going to be a baseball season after all. One of the 60 games following a month of an ugly public negotiation between the players and the owners over how to navigate through the money-shortening season. In the words of the Reds pitcher Trevor Bauer, COVID-19 already presented a loss situation, and we somehow found a way to make it worse. Anyways, we can at least briefly turn our attention once again to the upcoming season and pretend we're back in the middle of March, talking about baseball and baseball players and the wonder and joy of the best sport on the planet. A season of 60 games, fine here, 60 storylines to watch once those first pitches are thrown. If you read this article, they talk about Garrett Cole being in a Yankee uniform. They talk about Mookie Betts being in a Dodger uniform. Right. So there's so much to look forward to when it comes to the baseball season, which every baseball fan, any baseball fans that are out there, and I'm not talking about Jeff from Tampa, who's a Boston Red Sox fan. I'm not talking about Snug the Cat, who's a Boston Red Sox fan. I'm talking about the league as a whole. When you look at what you expect, the expectations, what's so interesting about going into this season now is some of these teams that you wouldn't expect to be in the hunt to make the playoffs. You're talking about the Chicago White Sox, teams that are up and coming. They might absolutely be in the running to make the playoffs this year.
Right. Teams that notoriously start strong all the time, too. We see it a lot from different teams. We've seen it a lot from the Mariners over the years. Obviously, they're not going to be good this year, but teams like the Rockies, they always seem to be good in the first half of the season. The Mets a couple years ago had that great April, and then all of a sudden they fell apart. So that's going to be interesting. You're definitely going to see some random fluky teams as a result of all this because of a smaller sample size. And you're going to see a lot of strange individual seasons, too. You might have a 400 hitter in a 60-game sample, which obviously it'll be an asterisk over it because it's 60 games, but you're going to see a lot of strange individual years, too, where you'll have 500 on base percentages and 400 batting averages. And for pitchers, you might even see double-digit ERAs if you pitch poorly.
And that's what I can't wait for. It's the pitching. The pitching is going to drive these teams to be successful moving forward. And my argument with the major leagues and some of these teams, you talk about the Yankees, the powerhouse Yankees, because you're going to have James Paxton, you're going to have a healthy Garrett Cole. This is going to be one of the most dominant pitching staffs going into the season. But being that they have missed practically all of spring training, they have no regular season, there is no room for error for the New York Yankees. Everybody is expecting the Yankees and the Dodgers to be in the World Series this year. But the question is, are these teams going to be ready moving forward when you think about a short season, a 60-game season, and making the playoffs? There are a lot of teams that we've been talking about, the Reds being one of them, that could be a sneaky team moving forward with the young talent that they have and the pitching staff that they have moving forward in the National League. So this is going to be a really, really interesting 60-game season, not just for the big top teams that we've been talking about, like the Yankees, like the Dodgers, like the Anaheim Angels that are supposed to be a powerhouse this year. There are going to be other teams that you're not expecting, like Seattle, like the Chicago White Sox, even the Cleveland Indians, where they lost a lot of players this offseason, but because of their short season and their lineup and the young players that they have, they can absolutely be in the mix making the playoffs this year.
There's going to be some interesting other facets with it too, because one, it's going to change a lot of managerial strategy for a lot of these teams, depending on how much starting pitching depth they have, depending on how much, obviously, bullpen depth that they have. They don't have to really preserve for innings limits as much anymore. Obviously, you're pitching in a shortened season, and those pitchers can go harder as a result, throwing the ball. And the other aspect of it is, how are you going to deal with transactions? You have these new 26-man roster, but you also we haven't heard anything yet about how trades are going to work in a shortened season. And we have heard that contracts are going to be still nullified, at least at this point, to be within that season, which is going to be weird too. So any pending free agents, are they going to trade them more urgently or impulsively? It's going to be very interesting because that hasn't been revealed yet in this plan.
And then you look at some of the teams, and I'm looking at the American League right now. Even the Baltimore Orioles have a chance to be in competing for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. As crazy as that may sound, when you look at the talent and the talent on their team, 60 games is not a lot of games. And if a team gets into a 10-game losing streak or a 5-game losing streak, that could cost them the playoffs. It could. And the Yankees, and we've seen this back and forth with the New York Yankees, it took them a little while to get their feet wet into the regular season, where they understood how this team can compete and how the dominance that they compete, not only for the relief pitching and their starting pitching, but really their lineup. Remember, if teams and players get into these holes where they can't hit, you're talking about Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton, the Yankees could be in a lot of trouble early in the season, where you got teams like the Boston Red Sox, even though they're not expected to win this year, they have a good lineup. They're very dangerous in the middle of their lineup. And teams like, you talk about Toronto with the young talent that they have, what we've been talking about, like the Guerreros. So, so there's so many ifs going into the baseball season. And I was talking to Charlie about this today. Even with the Nationals winning the World Series and what they did last year, there's a very good chance that they might not make the playoffs this year. Remember, early in the season, 50 games into the season last year, they were not in the playoffs.
They were fourth in their division.
Yeah, so now you're talking about the Atlanta Braves, teams like the New York Mets with their pitching staff and with their lineup this year, with the power that they have in their lineup. They're going to be a lot of dangerous teams in a 60-game season. It's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be very interesting, like Aaron Boone and some of these managers taking a chance early in the season winning these games, because if they lose a significant amount of games, the Yankees are going to have to win at least 35 games, in my eyes, to win that division. Mm-hmm.
And I think you also see as well, you're going to see a lot of big streaks make a difference when it comes to this shortened season, because we saw it last year too, especially in the National League. There was a lot of hype between certain teams getting on big streaks. We saw the Giants do it, and then they stumbled. You saw the Mets do it, then they stumbled. Arizona, Milwaukee, teams like that. And those big streaks may be magnified even more. And you brought up the Yankees and the Dodgers. Those teams notoriously start kind of average all the time, and then they get going later. So they might not have that kind of benefit of trying to just grow later in the season like they always do.
The dangerous teams to look forward to watching, especially in an early season, the St. Louis Cardinals, they're a very dangerous team. The Braves are going to be a very dangerous team. The Philadelphia Phillies, yes, the brand new Philadelphia Phillies, they're going to be very interesting. And the reason why is they got a new manager in Joe Girardi, who knows how to compete in the National League. He did it with the Marlins, and then he was with the Yankees all those years. Now you're going to get an opportunity to watch these teams and generate some of the offense that they're going to generate early in the season, not only with power, but hitting for average. So it's going to be really, really fun. Baseball is going to be even more fun than anybody thinks that it's going to be. So I'm very intrigued, especially with some of the young teams and the young talent that we've seen so far in the major leagues. And I'm telling you right now, the Anaheim Angels are going to be a very dangerous team in the West this year. As good as the Oakland Athletics and the Seattle Mariners, and some people think that the Texas Rangers and obviously the Houston Astros are going to be this year, I think that's going to be a fun division to watch in a short season, being that it's 60 games.
Our first guest is going to like that. He's from the Angels, so he'll love when you say that.
Yeah, well, because I think he's going to be very intrigued on what the Angels are going to do. The middle of that lineup, they added some good offensive firepower this offseason. Pitching, I mean, this team is going to be as dangerous as any team in a 60-game season.
And Joe Madden, too.
And I'll tell you this right now, and I will say this over and over and over again, knowing that it's a short season, don't expect some of the power numbers that we saw last year early in the season with some of these great power hitters like the Guerreros, like the Panda Bear for the Mets, and even the Yankees with Judge being healthy now that his rib is 100% healthy. You're not going to see the power early in the season, especially with the spring training. There's only going to be 2 weeks of spring training.
Right, and you're not going to also see a lot of the fluky years either that we saw last year. The guys like Eugenio Suarez all of a sudden almost hitting 50 home runs. You're not going to see those kinds of fluky years either, just because with baseball players a lot of the time too, it takes a while for them to get going. And you say it all the time with the Yankees and why Stanton was struggling and in the beginning of 2018, sometimes when the weather gets warmer, it gets better. Now they're going to be able to do it right away, but they're also going to have the spring training rust, so it'll be very interesting.
It's going to be really, really interesting, especially if you're a Mets and a Yankees fan, being that you're in New York. The Mets are going to be more intriguing to watch this year because the Yankees are expected to win.
Right.
Not the Mets. The Mets aren't expected to win. But what makes this short season benefit the Mets is because of the power that they landed into the lineup, and now they're going to be 100% healthy in the middle of their lineup. They're going to be as scary as the New York Yankees in a short season, especially with their pitching staff. So I'm going to be very intrigued and very interested to see where both teams and where are these teams going to play. Now, we have not heard where exactly they're going to play in what state. They're not going to be playing in New York, that's for sure. As far as Citi Field and Yankee Stadium, everything that I've heard, they're going to pick at least 3 to 4 destination places, maybe even more than that in certain areas. They're not going to put it in Arizona anymore because Arizona is now an outbreak of COVID-19. Yeah. So it's not going to be in Arizona and Florida too. Florida has become an outbreak of COVID-19 too. So they're not going to move it in those states like everybody thought they were going to. And here's the thing. The NBA, who everybody was talking about them moving the NBA season in Orlando, I don't know if the NBA is going to do that now with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and the outbreak of COVID-19 in those states. So I am very interested to see where they're going to drive these games, where they're going to put these games, and how are they going to make the divisions? Are they going to stick with the divisions the way they are, or are they going to move it into a cactus league or a grapefruit league? I don't know how they're going to do it.
Or the merging of what we saw in one of the proposals about a month ago with the combining of the two Easts, combining of the two Centrals essentially, and try to make it a centralized thing. And if they do end up having more of the COVID outbreaks in the South like we're seeing now more, it might end up having to be kind of a centralized location. You could see maybe the Cardinals as being a base of St. Louis for the Central teams. You could see something like San Francisco for the West teams, and then for the East, probably something in the middle too, like in Ohio or something like that.
As CJ was saying, what about moving the MLB to Omaha? And that's an interesting question. If the state is not COVID-19, and there's no outbreak of COVID-19, that might be a good idea. The question is with the MLB is strategically when you look at Rob Manfred, and you can't trust Rob Manfred is going to make the right decisions because he's made exactly what we've been saying the last couple of weeks. He's made all the wrong decisions so far with the MLB, with everything that's going on with the cheating scandals with the Boston Red Sox, the Houston Astros, and even with the New York Yankees. So I am very intrigued to see how Rob Manfred is going to manage this and where they're going to put these games and how they're going to design moving forward where the league is going to head. So to me, my argument isn't that I'm not happy that baseball's coming back. I'm very excited that baseball's coming back. The question is where and how are they going to move forward with the season? So that is going to be the question. And that's why we're going to get Jose Mota on the show in just a few minutes. And I'm going to ask him his opinion because I'm sure he has some more information that we don't have because he is an analyst. He is the broadcaster, TV and radio guy for the Angels. So I'd like to know what he thinks and his thoughts to the MLB coming back in a 60-game season. As you guys know, this is Down to the Wire. Remember, you can call us at 631-260-16 1601. Another shout out to the Big Guy Sports Show. Great show, boys. Looking forward to your show tomorrow at 5 o'clock. When we come back, we will be talking to Angels TV broadcaster Jose Mota here on Down to the Wire.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to Down to the Wire on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
631-260-1601 is the number. Remember, you can reach us at that number. Remember, you can also follow us by going to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. This is Down to the We are live from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. New York Eastern Time. I've been waiting to talk to this particular guy. I heard a couple of weeks ago that we were going to get him on the show, and I was very, very much looking forward to talking to him. We are now talking to the Angels TV broadcaster, Jose Mota. What's going on, Jose?
Everything is well, man. Even better. So good timing by you and having this interview fall exactly on a day in which we're actually saying there's going to be baseball here very soon.
And I'm sure you're excited about that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with this whole pandemic? How are you and your family doing?
Thankfully, we've been quite fortunate health-wise. I do feel and obviously think about and pray about all those who have suffered loss. Have suffered, debilitating health and family members, and for sure, those are always in our thoughts. But quite thankful that the family and I are healthy, and our friends, a couple of them have contracted the virus, and fortunately have come through. But we've been, staying put, enjoying my grandson. He's 18 months. Doing a few more things here via social media, involved with a Twitter chat that I've been doing on Thursdays. I've been doing a Japanese-American, English-Japanese.
Really?
Twitter chat every other week with a fabulous talent we have here named Saya Nomura. You might want to follow her. Her father was a legend. Her grandfather was a legend Japanese catcher, like the Japanese Yogi Berra. Suya Nomura. So Saya Nomura, she's an up-and-coming star in the Japanese-American broadcast and baseball, very knowledgeable. And, with Mark Gubizza, my great partner for so many years in Angels TV, we do an Instagram Live on Wednesdays called Hosey and Synchromaster. And beyond that, you know what? Just staying home. I love being home. And I'm home by day. I'm not missing the travel. I'm not missing the suitcases, but for sure I've been missing the game.
It's funny. I was talking to Charlie Slows today, the voice of the Nationals, and I asked him, I said, are you excited that baseball is coming back? And he says, I'm very excited, but the problem is I don't know where I'm going to be stationed. Am I going to be stationed in a box, or am I going to be stationed at the stadium? So I don't even know where I'm going to be stationed moving forward being that there's a 60-game season. So it's going to be very interesting how the MLB is going to move forward with this, especially not even knowing if they're going to be playing in their home places. Are they going to be a certain area of places where some of these teams are going to be stationed? And are they going to have a grapefruit league or a cactus league, or kind of maneuver the division? So what are your thoughts with moving into the season now, Jose, with this team, the Anaheim Angels, with some of the star power that they have? They have arguably, well, it's not even arguably, he is the best player in the MLB. He's been the best player in the MLB, and Mike Trout. What are your thoughts with this team moving forward, knowing that there's a 60-game season with Joe Maddon as the manager?
Well, Joe Maddon becomes, a key piece here, because Joe Maddon is as creative and as inventive and as good a motivator as there is, to know that this is what the season brings. Well, this is what you have to do. Take care of business. Nobody is at a disadvantage here. I mean, if anything, if you get off to a good start and you maintain momentum, you might roll yourself right into the playoffs. And the Angels obviously have not been to the playoffs in a while, so it will be advantageous to go out there and play good baseball right from the get-go. The other thing, too, is that there's not going to be a Cactus League or Grapefruit League, obviously, for health reasons and travel and all that kind of stuff. But the teams will start working out on July 1st. They will train in their home cities. The only team that cannot train in their home city is Toronto, the Blue Jays, because of the restrictions on travel to Canada. But overall, guys are going to be happy that they're going to be staying home, be home with their families every single night. One of the toughest thing really is going to be to get, amped up in 3 weeks to get to playing shape and playing level and mentality. But that's just the challenge that is out there for everybody. And The other good thing about this too is that the rosters will start probably around 30 and then be minimized as the season progresses. So it's going to give a lot of guys opportunities to make the team, make an impression. You can bulk up your pitching staffs. And for the Angels, now the Los Angeles Angels, if people hear you say Anaheim, some people get very upset. So I'm not going to use Anaheim. Make sure you lose. When you say Angels, that's what we do. You say the Angels. But you know what? For many people, it's hard to lose the that instinct. It's it's that reaction. Anaheim Angels. That's how they won back in 2002. But I look forward to it. I look forward to what this new challenge brings. I mean, there's going to be a taxi squad, probably 50 or 60 players that are going to be ready because obviously there's not going to be a minor league season. So it's going to be providing a lot of chances for a lot of guys. But you got to be ready. You got to be ready to execute. You got to play the game, and know that to me, one of the key pieces here becomes your middle relief. Those guys that are going to be able to hold you for 3 innings, right after starters come out. Starters, I'm not going to be out at 110 pitches. So you got to understand that the middle relief becomes important like never before in the game of baseball to have guys and candidates and piggyback on guys. Piggyback on starters if you need to, according to who you play. So things are going to be different in so many respects. The DH rule, obviously, for this season will be implemented on both sides, but the travel is going to be restricted only to within your division, and then your division rivals in the other league. That's the way it's going to be done. So there's going to be very little travel outside of your area, your region. So it's going to be fun for us, at least. And maybe Charlie was not informed from his team yet, but at least we know that the plan for the Angels is to broadcast the games from the stadium, to do our pre and post game shows from the stadium. And as of right now, and the radio broadcast also from the stadium. That's as of right now. I mean, things could change, but at least in that case, watching games and doing the games on the road from an empty stadium and a booth, it's not going to be a problem. You got to go out there and just take care of doing your job. And that's something that I did for 5 years, actually. That's how I started my TV career, broadcasting Major League Baseball, watching games and calling them off the monitors for 5 years at Fox. And those are national games, big games, a World Series. I did Cotton Bowl. I did a Super Bowl. I did, Sammy and McGuire, 98, World Series, you name it. So it's going to be a challenge, but, we're just happy for the people of this country that have gone through so much, and people around the world, with so many international stars that are going to see their heroes back in uniform playing baseball. Hopefully, too, and I say hopefully, there's not going to be a setback with the coronavirus, because if you think of what happened here the last week or so between the Phillies, the Giants, the Jays, and these positives that came out. And if baseball had started 2 weeks ago, the season would have been halted right now.
Right.
So let's hope that once they get going, all these protocols are taken care of, and the players that want to be tested out daily, I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm very happy.
You talked about Joe Madden and the creativity of it, and now we have a shortened season, potentially probably 60 games. Do you think that kind of style managerially, whether it's him or whether it's other managers, younger managers across the league, will be more in play because of the 60 games or less?
They're going to have to use whatever the personnel dictates, but because of of how quick this is going to happen, if you think about, pitchers start in spring training with 3 innings or so, right? 2 innings, 30 pitches. Then they go to 3 innings, 45 pitches. Then they go to 60. Then they go to 75 and so forth. By the time they leave, at least they've hit 90 or 100 pitches. The Angels' plan for this season was for guys to leave spring training at around 105, 110 pitches going into the season. So that's going to be different. We don't know how much you're going to be able to implement a routine playing against your own guys, because there's not going to be, a Cactus League or a Grapefruit League. You're going to be playing inter-squad games, and sometimes it's hard to get amped up for those games and get the fluids going and get everything going, the adrenaline, competitiveness. But they're going to have to find a way. But, in that respect, the managing style for Joe is ideal because he knows what he has. He's got guys that get on base, David Fletcher, the Tommy LaStellas, Anderson Simmons. They have the clutch guys. They have the veteran guys in Albert Pujols. They have the best player in the game. You got Rendon. You got Jason Castro. You got Upton. You have Brian Goodwin. So it's going to be interesting. But Joe has plenty of weapons, I believe, to go out there and at least pressure teams right from the get-go, run the bases hard, take the extra base. Don't be afraid to go first or third. push the issue, and the more pressure you put on the defense from the very get-go, well, the tougher you're going to be to defend, because obviously it might take sluggers. Remember, it might take sluggers a little bit to get going and find that home run stroke. So you better be able to create runs no matter what to make sure that you have an advantage.
We are talking to Angels TV broadcaster Jose Mota. Now, Jose, when you look at, you were talking about the roster of the Angels, and they have a tremendous amount of talent. And you added Anthony Rendon, who had one of his best seasons last year, was a big part of the Nationals winning the World Series last year. When you look at Shohei Ohtani, who a lot of people were talking about, he not only is he a fantastic hitter in the lineup, you could put him anywhere in the lineup. He hits for power, he hits for average, but this guy is one of the most dominant young pitchers in baseball. Coming back from Tommy John's, he hasn't really pitched in practically almost 2 years. What are your thoughts of him coming back this season, his 60-game season, and showing his talent on the mound?
Oh, it's going to be amazing. I mean, if anything, Shohei Ohtani could be the guy that's ahead of everybody right now, because he has been on his throwing program. He has been throwing against hitters, and he's a monster, man. He's a beast. You just watching videos of him working out, throwing to live hitters, and pumping some fastballs in there is pretty impressive. And Shohei, what he brings, I mean, it's something that we have never seen in Major League Baseball, other than, back in the days of Babe Ruth, obviously, when we didn't see it. But to see it every day and to see the talent on the field, to see how young he is, his interactions and adaptation to the culture, and how he's beloved by the fans, his teammates, and just a quiet, unassuming guy who's a mega rock star in Japan, who comes here and fits in well with everybody and just puts on a display every time he's on the mound. And when he's at home plate, it's one of those times where you don't want to go and get anything like concessions, because he might put on a show or do something you've never seen before. And plus, Shohei can run. Shohei is one of the fastest guys on the team, in fact, in Major League Baseball. And Shohei creates a lot of havoc when he's in the bases, and he wants to be active in the bases, which I love. The difference is going to be, compared to last year, that he's not going to be able to be on the field as a hitter every single day. But, again, another challenge for Joe Madden. We'll see what happens. And because you don't have the luxury of shutting him down for 3 days, that perhaps Shohei might be hitting on days when he's also pitching. So that's going to be a lot of fun to follow and to see how creative he can be, knowing that you cannot push it too hard, knowing that obviously with a short season, the playoffs are right around the corner. And you don't want to be losing guys and sacrifice guys because of the early going and not have them available later on.
Can you see the trend of Shohei Ohtani-like players, guys that are just very good athletes that could hit and pitch? Can you see that being a new trend in baseball? Maybe not next year or this year or the following year, but maybe like 5 years from now, if Ohtani does become successful?
Well, Shohei has shown that he's successful. He's done it. It's not easy to do. I mean, he's got to have obviously the athletic ability, the skills, the tools, the mindset, and the discipline to also know how to kind of balance things out. From time of the cage, from throwing the bullpens, from what he watches on video to get ready for a game against a pitcher or a game against hitters. So all that, goes into consideration and how special this guy is and the mentality that he does possess. But in becoming a trend, you got to be good. I mean, you can't just do it just to do it. You cannot just make guys do it. Everybody wants to, if you ask an infielder, they might say, hey, I want to pitch. But everybody thinks they can pitch. And it's like pitcher. It's like a pitcher. A pitcher, he's like, oh, I could hit it. I mean, it's not easy to do. If it was easy to do, more guys would have done it, not just 2 years ago, but many, many years ago and throughout the history of the game. So because it's not easy to do, I don't think it's going to become a trend. More teams will try it for sure because of Shohei, and teams are trying it, even drafting kids and saying, oh, this guy projects as a two-way player. But you know what? It gets to a point with so many games, so many demands on your body, on your mind, on the travel and the minor leagues and the buses and the learning. There's a curve that needs to happen also in learning. Which position are you going to be more advanced in? And at some point, when it comes down to your talent, which side is more developed, and Major League teams have to be forced to decide, well, this guy's going to help us more as a pitcher, so we need a pitcher now, and then that's how decisions are made.
We are talking to Angels TV broadcaster Jose Mota. Now, Jose, I'm a big Albert Pujols fan. When he played for the Cardinals, and last season, everybody keeps saying he's breaking down, but last season he had a sensational season. I know he didn't bat for average; he was batting .244, but he had 23 home runs, he had 93 RBIs, and he was the best player in baseball, really, in the early 2000 era. Now you're talking about Mike Trout and the growth of Mike Trout, of what he has been the last 7 or 8 years. As a player, and really has taken over baseball. And this guy could be one of the greatest baseball players by the time he's done and retiring. When you look at Albert Pujols and his leadership, do you see his leadership on the field as much as you've seen Mike Trout develop as a player?
Oh, they're connected. I mean, Albert has become a different player because of Trout. And Trout is the first one to tell you he's thankful to have guys like Albert Pujols. And, obviously he had Torrey Hunter here before, but Albert's been the one in his ear since day one. And Albert's been a guy that lived it. Albert, I mean, if you put Albert's first 10 years in the big leagues, I don't see anybody in the history of the game matching those numbers. Nobody. No Trout, no Manny Ramirez, no Miguel Cabrera. Nobody's ever had 10 years like Albert Pujols did. And I think people forget that, and we should not forget that. I mean, that's history, man. We're talking about a walking Hall of Famer, still producing, as you mentioned. Many people critique Albert for his legs and lack of speed or not walking. Albert's a productive player, man, and this guy wants to win with the best. And one thing about Albert, too, is he's done it before. He's hungry. I think one of the best things now is that we have Tony La Russa here with the organization. That's a huge asset. Tony's done it before with Albert. Albert is inspired and wants to learn. He wants to win so badly for owner Artie Moreno, who has put so many resources, and effort into building a winner. And for a guy like Pujols, for those that say that RBIs don't matter, it's just a product where you hit. Well, I totally am against that. I just don't believe that, because not everybody that you put in number 4 spot is going to drive in 100 runs or 120 runs. You got to know how to drive in runs. If it was that easy to drive in runs, then why aren't there more people in the 2,000 RBI club? And that's the way I defend Albert. No, he's not the same player. Of course not. Mike Trout's not going to be the same player, in 7 years. That's just reality. That's what the game is. And we have to understand that guys evolve and they decline. But at the same time, I'll take 23 and 93 from a 25-year-old right now that perhaps is being talked about highly, that's never going to get to that number only because he walks. He's talked about highly. So, Albert's getting paid to hit home runs and drive in runs, and to me, forget about it. He is as productive as they've come, and there's no doubt that he fits more the prototype old-style player, but this guy is a winner wherever he is because he knows how to play the game. He knows how to be a good offensive player and how to impact also his teammates.
You guys have broadcast another great player in Vladimir Guerrero when he came to the Angels in, I believe it was 2004. What was the best thing you saw about him, watching him play and broadcasting Vladimir Guerrero?
Oh, just the superstar, man. Just the big smile. Reminded me of watching clips of Roberto Clemente, who was a teammate of my dad. Vladdy played with such joy, effort every single day. There's not a time when Vladdy didn't hit a ground ball to second base or shortstop that he didn't run hard down that line. The teeth and the smile and the pretty whites and the throws from right field, the reckless running on the bases, the thunder in that bat, and just his presence. I mean, Vladdy brought presence, man. Number 27 in right field. Everywhere we went, it was like, wow, there's the big Vladdy Guerrero, and I'm so honored to be a friend of his, to have been part of his Hall of Fame induction, historic actually, and to see that he is humble. Again, another great teammate guy. Vladdy didn't have a whole lot to say. A lot of it is because of the English language. But boy, you talk about the best run the Angels have ever had in their history came with number 27 Guerrero batting third or fourth, and also surrounded by a lot of Hispanic players, which is something we should not ignore. For this organization, their best run ever in history was with Frankie Rodriguez closing games. You have Escobar, you have Bartolo, you got Asturias, you got Ibar, you got Guerrero. Those are prime players, man, and you can see the importance of, as we're facing all this stuff about race and all that, the importance Latinos and blacks have played in the history of this organization and throughout baseball.
As you guys know, we are talking to Angels TV broadcaster, great Jose Mota. Now, Jose, I was talking in the beginning of my monologue, in the beginning of the show, I was talking about the American League West. And the reason why I'm looking at the American League West, because it's a 60-game season, you're talking about the Houston Astros, the Oakland A's, the Texas Rangers, the LA Angels, and the Seattle Mariners. All 5 teams could be on the loom of possibly making the playoffs, being that there's a 16-game season. I think the Angels, with the talent that they have, with Rendon, with the middle of this lineup, is going to be as dangerous as any middle lineup in baseball, with Ohtani there and Pujols and, of course, the great Mike Trout. What are your thoughts about going into the season, a 60-game season, knowing that it's only 60 games, and the Angels, with the talent that they added this offseason, and Joe Madden, they have an opportunity to be a World Series champion this year?
Well, they need to go out there and establish the way they're going to play immediately, just like we saw in spring training. There's a nice mix of the veteran players, as they mentioned. I mean, Anthony Rendon is such an addition to this club. I can't even describe to you how important that is to have a Gold Glove caliber third baseman, a leader, somebody that's won rings now. He's driven and runs. He is for average. He gets on base. He sets the table. I mean, Mike Trout's going to have somebody, hitting behind him that he's never had before on a consistent basis, and somebody like Rendon. But there's no doubt the way you present it is they're going to score runs. They're going to have the ability to score some runs. Now is a matter of holding down the opponent and holding down, the other lineups and being able to hold leads and being able to get ahead of teams early and have your pitching withhold. So, I mean, the Andrew Heaney's, the Matt Andrees, Patrick Sandoval, Griffin Canning, obviously. You have, the addition of Tehran and Bundy. Those guys play huge, huge, huge role. Felix Pena, Dylan Peters. Mm-hmm. These are huge things that need to happen for the Angels to, get it all together. But overall, offense will be there. Base running will be there. Now it's a matter of pitching, which is obviously the number one thing for everybody. Now, in terms of the division, you still got to go through a tough team like the Astros, regardless of what's happening with them in the past and breaking the rules and cheating. They're a good ball club. And the Oakland A's, the Oakland A's is a team that nobody talks about. I mean, they have one of the best players in the American League, Marcus Semien. Nobody talks about this kid. Finalist for the AL MVP, and a guy that knows how to play the game. He's become a much better defensive player, reliable with the glove and the arm. He's worked his tail off. He got power. He plays in Oakland, underappreciated. And, Piscotty and Olson. Matt Chapman. These are super good players, man. Chris Davis, Ramon Laureano. And the Houston Astros, obviously, without Cole, obviously are going to be a different team. But they're going to be benefiting from the fact that Verlander was not going to be ready to start the season. Had it started back in late March, and now he's going to be ready. And when you've won, and you have talent, with Correa and Altuve and Reddick and those guys, there's no doubt that you're the team to beat. I think the Astros need to go in with the same mentality that they're the team to beat. Bregman, one of the best players in the game, and taking nobody for granted. The Texas Rangers are going to be inspired by the new ball club, young ball club. Chris Woodward does a fantastic job as a manager. Joey Gallo, who couldn't play a whole lot last year, is more than ready. And they know that they have some young players that they need to go out there and have step up. Willie Calhoun plays a big role for them. He's going to be playing every day, and it's going to be fun to watch. So, a new ballpark, new surroundings. Corey Kluber, that rotation is going to be fun to watch too. Mm-hmm. And for the Seattle Mariners, again, a short season might present the opportunity that they need to say, hey guys, you know what? For 60, let's go out there and just put it all together and get it done. So it's going to be hard to, pin down a favorite, but for sure you got to go out there and look at talent, look at history, and know that the Angels are in a good spot to go out there and make a run and be one of these 5 teams in their league.
You managing before Madden coming in was Mike Scioscia. He was there for a long time. He was there for quite a while in terms of that run that you were talking about with those great teams with Vladimir Guerrero. What do you think some of the things that made Mike Scioscia such a good manager and so long in different phases of the game?
Mike, number one, understood the game. He could teach the game. And Mike cared. Mike cared about his players. Mike cared about them as people. Mike created an environment where he wanted players to know that he's going to put them in the best position to succeed. Mike Scioscia managed a clubhouse. Mike Scioscia managed the game to the details. Mike Scioscia pre-managed the game to the details. So he was not surprised by anything. That's why you've seen the product of Ron Renicky, a guy like Dino Evil, who's to me on the verge of becoming a big league manager. But Renicky is going to manage the Red Sox, former manager for the Milwaukee Brewers. You see Joe Madden, obviously, went up to Tampa Bay, won a World Series with nobody else but the Chicago Cubs. I mean, that's unreal. And then Buddy Black, who's managing the Rockies. So it's a product of how Mike delegates to his coaches, how players respond to the challenge. And sometimes they don't like what they're being told, but they know it's best for them, for the team, and it's about winning. It's about the W. It's about the uniform and the name in the front, not the name in the back. And Mike Scioscia overall just took a lot of pride in how he prepared his team on the offensive side, on the defensive side, on the pitching side, with the catchers holding down base runners. All those things matter to him. And his imprint was not only in the big leagues, but all throughout the organization. And right now we need more managers that can go out there and set that print and that filters down. So when guys get to the big leagues, they know exactly what to expect. They know exactly that mistakes are going to be part of the game. They know what their role is going to be, and they know they have to play the game well. They got to be round players, not just like one-dimensional players to stick. And that's why Mike is a guy that brought that success with his mentality as a catcher with the Dodgers, a winning attitude, and you got to have the winning attitude and the taste of winning to understand exactly what it takes to get your players there.
We are talking to Angels TV broadcaster Jose Mota. Now, Jose, these are the last two questions I have for you, and they're good questions because I know you have your own thoughts to it. You mentioned the Houston Astros and the cheating with the garbage pails in the dugouts and the different cameras that they used over there, and all the way in the bullpen. What were your thoughts to the Houston Astros? Do you think that Rob Manfred laid the hammer down on them? And what are your thoughts with the electric umpiring? Thoughts of possibly implementing and taking away the home umpire position?
Well, the Astros and cheating, the integrity of the game was compromised. There's no doubt. I mean, I don't think that you can say that they won those games by beating the opponent fair and square. It's just no way to say that. There's no way to quantify, to justify that. It's over, and Rob Manfred did what he thought he needed to do under the circumstances and with the resources that he had available. But I think the punishment could have been, a little harder. Players share the same thoughts. I know as a player that if I had been given the signs and I knew what was coming, I would have been a 300 hitter easy. I mean, it doesn't take much for you to, either lay off a pitch or know what's coming and time it right. But, in that case, they're going to pay a price for that. And people are not going to forget. They're not going to forget. Two of my best friends lost jobs because of that, and they are paying the price. And, Alex Cora, who's a tremendous baseball man, made a mistake. He admits it and is paying the price for that. And I can see him being back in baseball here after this season, maybe not in a managerial role, but somewhere with somebody in a very important player personnel role. And Carlos Beltran, who never even got a chance to put on a uniform as a manager, and paying that price. They know they made mistakes. It's not right. What they did is not right. And there are going to be, people identify with that asterisk, who knows, from here on forever. But when you think about, those things and what it takes to get that done, it was a group effort. It came from above, and obviously they were used, and there were instruments to facilitating all that. And then, hopefully people forget about that at some point, give them another chance. But they know that they did wrong, and they're paying that price. And what was the other part of the question? And
the umpires, the fact that they're...
You know what? Just like I didn't think instant replay was going to happen, I doubt it. I think it's going to be implemented at some point. I mean, they've gotten so far on the testing that now it's in, higher leagues and higher competition. But it's going to have to be improved a lot. I saw some examples of what happened in the fall league, some of the calls that were being made, and no, you just cannot have that. That cannot be accepted at the major league level. Some of the strikes that were being called.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it's going to happen, I think it will happen. Eventually it's going to happen, and you're going to have the home plate umpire just there to call, plays at home plate. But the fact that they tinker with this so much means that eventually this will happen.
Jose, why don't you tell the fans how they can find you on social media?
follow me on social media. Well, Instagram and Twitter, the same. Jose Mota 05. JOSEMOTA 05. And I look forward to always connecting with the fans. I'm not on social media a lot, but I am there enough just for the fans to interact with the fans and, maybe say a couple things about my personal life. Not a whole lot, but at least I love to share with the fans. And because we are so fortunate, I've been so fortunate my entire life in baseball that, I grew up in baseball. I was around star players from the day I was born. I know what a clubhouse is like, the media, the travel, all those kinds of things. Being around, my father, Manny, who, taught us everything we needed to know about the game. Having gone to a great school in Cal State Fullerton, winning a national championship for Augie Garrido meant a lot to me. So all those things that come back to, for me to share all those things in part of my history is very important. And also for the kids. I love talking to the youngsters. I love talking to the coaches, the parents, the moms and dads, the grandmas when they reach out via Twitter or Instagram to share stories, give them baseball tips, and, share a lot of that because obviously we can't keep all that inside. I mean, God put us here for a reason, and if you can just make somebody's day and bring a smile and let them know that you had a conversation with Mike Trout about young players today, it means a whole lot. How to throw a baseball, how to grip a baseball, all those things mean that I got to be the conduit and the channel to get to the fans, and I really enjoy that part of social media.
Well, you get the opportunity to watch Mike Trout every single day, which is to me it's incredible because he's around where we live. He's from Philadelphia. We're over here in New York, so I actually followed Mike Trout over the years, growing from high school ball to really getting drafted, and I wanted the Yankees to draft him. I remember that. Yep. So I've been following Mike Trout for years, and everybody was talking about Bryce Harper, but nobody really knew who Mike Trout was until he was drafted at, I think he was the 24th.
I think he was the same draft as Harper.
No, he was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Harper was 1, and he was the 24th or 26th pick by the Angels, if I could remember. But
Mike, in fact, the big schools missed out on him. He was committed to like East Carolina or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. So
you figure like somebody knew a lot about this kid, and like, wow, where are the big schools? And like,
it's an incredible story. It really is, and that's why
it is a great story. He's a great kid, humble kid, plays hard, works hard, wants to learn, never satisfied, and really deserves to be in the postseason. So people really get to see this guy on display.
It's a shame because he is the face of baseball, but nobody. It's so funny, Jose, when we talk about Mike Trout. If you put Mike Trout on my block and he walked down the block, nobody would know who he is. But if LeBron James was walking up and down the block, they know who he was. So. And Mike Trout, to me, is the greatest athlete right now in professional sports. And I don't think anybody gives him enough respect on how talented he really is.
Oh, this guy's special. Plus, he's a great kid. That's the main thing. He's a very humble kid. You can talk to him. I got to meet Mike Trout when he was in A-ball and had a conversation with him when he was in Puerto Rico playing for the USA team. And that's how our relationship started. Very respectful and very hungry. Great family kid. Parents, both educators, so you can see why he's turned out the way he is. And I say it again, this guy deserves to be surrounded by good players, that deserves to win, and because he's been around guys have won before, like Albert Pujols, and he knows what it's all about.
Jose, thank you for joining us. When the season does begin, we'd love to get you back on to talk a little Angels baseball and some MLB baseball.
You got it. My pleasure, guys. Keep doing a good job, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Thank you, Jose.
Bye.
Jose Mota, and he is the voice of I almost said Anaheim Angels again, the Los Angeles Angels. Great interview. Yes. Gave us some good insight of not only the MLB, but Angels baseball, and they have a great opportunity this year, adding the players and the pieces that they added this year to be a fantastic 60-game season team. So I'm looking forward to the season. I'm very excited. So definitely looking forward to that. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get more into what was the topic that you really wanted to get into?
The dysfunctional franchises. Can we finally get the list out?
All right, we'll go to a quick break. We'll talk about dysfunctional franchises in all of professional sports, and then at 7:15 we'll be talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood here on Down to the Wire.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to Down to the Wire on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
631-260-1601 is the number. And remember, this is Down to the Wire. We are live 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. New York Eastern Time. Remember, you can go to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. As you guys know, I want to thank Jose Mota for joining us, the voice of the Los Angeles Angels. Gave us some good insight, not only with the Angels, but the MLB, and looking forward to the season. So he gave us some great information. In just a few moments, we're going to have Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood joining us here on Down to the Wire. But I do want to get into dysfunctional franchises. And Speedy, this is something that you wanted to get into, and there are a lot of dysfunctional franchises here in New York. A lot of them. A matter of fact, I would say 3 of the top 10 franchises in professional sports are here in New York. One of them, I would say, the New York Jets has been a dysfunctional franchise for a very, very long time. An organization that hasn't won since 1969. They've been to a couple AFC championship games with Rex Ryan. Besides that, the last time they saw even a lick of greatness was in 98 when they were in an AFC title game and completely got their butts whipped by the Broncos in the second half of the game. So when I look at the Jets, they're a dysfunctional organization. They've always been. The New York Knicks have been a dysfunctional organization in professional basketball. They have been the worst franchise in the last 25 years. They have won the least amount of games in the last 25 seasons in the NBA. When you're talking about some of the great teams of the 90s, when you talk about Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley and Charles Smith and Xavier McDaniel, Kiki Vandeweghe, John Starks, and Anthony Mason, we talk about one of those great teams of the New York Knicks. And really, Pat Riley and Jeff Van Gundy. And then you look at some of the coaches we've seen, in the last 15 to 20 years, they've been absolutely horrendous. So you talk about the New York Knicks franchise. Another franchise that have been probably the most dysfunctional franchise in New York is the New York Mets because of the Wilpons. The Wilpons have been one of the worst owners in professional sports. You talk about Jeff, who has been all over the place in his decision-making and who's taking over the team. You sold the team to Cohen, and then you decide that Cohen doesn't own 80% of the team until 5 years down the road. It makes absolutely no sense. They want control. They're a control-freaking organization. So those 3 organizations right now in New York have been 3 of the worst professional organizations in professional sports in the last 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, the Knicks especially, I think, just because in a free agency-driven world, every player wants to go to big cities, seemingly. The fact that they haven't been able to do as much as they could do in free agency in a player-run league, essentially now, you have to look at it and say, what is going on here? And then they can't develop players, they can't really do anything much. And you're right, they haven't won any games, really.
They're dysfunctional from the ownership all the way down to the president, to the GM, to the coaching. I mean, they've been so dysfunctional, and this organization needs to figure it out. Hopefully, knowing that you bring in Rose, who is a guy that has a background as an agent, one of the best agents in professional sports, bringing him in, maybe bringing in Tom Thibodeau, and maybe a good coaching staff could really develop some of the young players. But when you talk about dysfunction, the New York Knicks, the New York Mets, and the New York Jets have been dysfunctional, including the New York Giants the last 8 or 9 years.
The last 5 years, I would say the Giants are definitely
8 or 9 years.
You would
say
even more than that. I was going to say since they fired Coughlin, or that whole bad debacle of whatever happened with Coughlin, whether he resigned or not, I think that's really the window you're looking at. So if we're judging dysfunctional franchises of the last 5 years, I would put the Giants in there. I don't know about top 5 in all of sports, but definitely in the NFL for sure.
New York sports has been a dysfunction, really, besides the New York Yankees. It's been so dysfunctional in so many ways to one. So I would put the Mets, the Jets, and the Knicks in the top 10 of dysfunctional franchises in professional sports.
Now, who would you put in if you're including every other team, too? Because the Knicks were my number 3 overall, and definitely I think the most dysfunctional in basketball. Who would you include in terms of your other ones?
The Browns. They've been a dysfunctional organization.
Yep.
They've been absolutely terrible, horrendous. No matter who they bring in as far as the coach is concerned, the GM's concerned, or even with the ownership, the way they run their organization, they've been an absolute debacle. And deciding to go with Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold was a real big mistake. It will catch up to them. It will. It might not be right now, but it will catch up to to them soon enough. So I just think they're a dysfunctional organization, just completely poorly run by ownership. And you know, it all trickles down from the top. So the Browns have been a dysfunctional organization. Another organization that I think has been very dysfunctional in professional baseball. And you talk, and I'm going to give the name in just 1 second. When you talk about the Miami Marlins, they've been a dysfunctional organization really because of ownership. Now, they have won championships. The Marlins have actually won World Series championships.
They won twice, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like they haven't won, but the ownership over there, back and forth, not putting the money into the right players, giving money to the wrong players over the years has really cost the organization a whole lot. And then they bring in Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter sells off practically the whole team and some of the great players in the league. You're talking about 2 MVPs and Yelich and Giancarlo Stanton. You send them to the Yankees for practically nothing, and then you sell Christian Yelich practically to the Milwaukee Brewers, and he turns out to be one of the best players in baseball. So this is a real dysfunctional organization. And even with Derek Jeter there, how could you not look at dysfunction of Derek Jeter selling off practically every single great player that he has? So
I would add another one for the MLB. I would say the Mariners as well for MLB. It seems like they make a lot of bad trades all the time, and it seems like they haven't been maybe as bad as the Marlins because they've still been average at times, but outside of the Griffey, Edgar Martinez, those teams, when have they really been good in their franchise history beyond that? They haven't made the playoffs since that 2001 season, so that's going to make it very hard. They're the only team that's never made a World Series, so I would add them to the list as well if you're judging baseball.
The Orlando Magic, an organization that just can't win. They, over the years with Shaquille O'Neal, especially in the 90s, the late 90s, they were a dominant force with Anthony Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal, and they built around Shaquille O'Neal, and then he decided to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. Ever since he decided to go to the Los Angeles Lakers, this organization has been a mockery, a laughingstock. Yes, they had Dwight Howard and Jameer Nelson, and they made it to the championship 1 year, and they completely got their butts whipped. But nevertheless, they've been a dysfunctional organization ever since Dwight Howard decided to leave the organization as well. So they've just been a terrible organization as well, poorly run, poorly owned, trickles all the way down from the top. So they're another organization.
All right. For NHL, for me, I would take the Buffalo Sabres as definitely being the most right now. We were talking about it yesterday, the great teams they had with Dominic Hasek when he was there in the 90s. But again, it's kind of like the Mariners, really beyond that. What have they done in their franchise history? Not very much. They haven't made the playoffs, I think, since 06 in a NHL, which has a lot of parity all the time. So it seems like a lot of prospects crumble there, big name draft picks crumble there. Now Jack Eichel wants out. So I think there's a lot of different things they can look at when you come to the Buffalo Sabres. And again, it seems like no player ever wants to go there either.
We have a caller, CJ. What's going on, my friends?
What's going on, Errol?
I'm good, man.
Pete?
Go ahead, my friend.
So I got to say, I definitely agree with your list of dysfunctional franchises there, especially the New York Jets being one of them. So
I'm a fan, so I'm just speaking the truth.
Yep, it's the truth. It really is. It's just been, it's it's enough to give you agita. I'm surprised I'm not bald yet.
Well, you do a whole show, which is coming to our network very, very soon, about the New York Jets and their organization. And really moving forward, I think this organization is run by Joe Douglas is going to only help them moving forward. They need to get rid of Jamal Adams. They need to get rid of all the cancer that's in their locker room because they need to develop and build on Sam Darnold and build around the talent that they have right now, building around the offensive line.
Well, I completely agree, except the only thing, I don't agree with getting rid of Jamal Adams. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, regardless of the corner that he's painted himself in with his shenanigans on social media, the Jets still control him. And most of all, Joe Douglas has still publicly said that he wants to make Jamal Adams a Jet for life. So now whether Jamal Adams is going to, want to sign a contract with the New York Jets or not, well, then he could basically file his retirement papers with the NFL, and he can go about his free agency that way because Joe Douglas and the New York Jets are not in the wrong in any way, shape, or form right now. And I think this is something that you have a portion of the fan base that is incredibly upset with the organization, feeling like Jamal Adams should get paid and the organization is kind of jerking him around, and then you have the other half in which they understand that, hey, look, Jamal Adams is still under contract for the next 2 years, and yes, he has been the Jets' best player. He just needs to understand that we got a pandemic going on. The salary cap is still in flux with no official word for next year, which is why you're not seeing a lot of NFL teams really make a lot of big moves as far as their salary cap is concerned. So as far as signings are concerned as well, too. I mean, other than Dak Prescott, but I mean, Jerry Jones prints his own money downstairs in the basement of his mansion in Texas. So I don't really know if you could really count that. But, I mean, if anything, what Jet fans just need to do is they need to continue to stay the course and be patient. Everybody's completely aggravated with Adams' antics on social media. I really think eventually a deal is going to get done. Joe Douglas has been a man of his words, which has been said by every single free agent that has come through the door of One Jets Drive since he has been there. So I have every reason to believe that Jamal Adams will get signed. Now, Jamal Adams may be an unhappy New York Jet, and you know what? Then he could file his retirement papers with the NFL, like I said, and he could go about his free agent. He could sit out the mandatory year that he has to, and then he could go and apply for reinstatement like everyone else, and then put his services up to the highest bidder. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Jamal Adams is still under contract for the New York Jets, and that's the way it's going to be. And Joe Douglas is going to look to get a deal done. And I really just think the rest of this is nonsense. And really, the only person that there is to blame for this whole mess is Jamal Adams, because he can't keep his mouth shut. And because he's getting bad advice from his agent or from his representation who are chirping in his ear, telling him, well, the Jets ain't doing this and the Jets ain't doing that and whatever. So, I mean, to me, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at it from a fan's point of view, which is, look, I want you to be here. I want you to play for this team. And because of your contract, you're still going to be here. And if you're going to be that much of a pain in the neck, then, Joe Douglas is just going to inactivate you or sit you and create maybe another Carson Palmer 2.0, although he's not a quarterback.
CJ, we're going to have to get off the phone because we're going to be we have our next guest that's going to be joining us in just one moment. But thank you for calling. You're absolutely right. Jamal Adams, I beg to differ with what you say. I want to get rid of him. I don't think he wants to be here. And if he doesn't want to be here, I don't want him here. I want the right players around Sam Darnold so we can move forward as an organization. I just don't think Jamal Adams is the right guy. I just don't.
Yeah, well, I think you and I are going to agree to disagree, but you know what? As soon as we get Weapons Hot on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network,
looking forward to
you
it.
Need to pop on, and we will have a big-time conversation about this.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us, CJ.
You bet. Have a good night, guys.
You too. CJ DeSimone, who's going to be joining, his show is going to be joining our network very, very soon, Weapons Hot. So it's going to be really, really fun. When we come back, we will get more into this. Carl, you're absolutely right. The Edmonton Oilers and the Raiders are very dysfunctional organizations. We'll get more into this after we talk to Kansas State football defensive line recruit Brayden Wood here on Down to the Wire.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to Down to the Wire on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Oh, come on. 631-260-1601. This is Down to the Wire. We are live every single Monday and Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. New York Eastern Time, as you guys know. As you know, you can also reach us by going to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. I want to, again, give a shout-out to Jose Mota joining us as our first guest. Our second guest, looking forward to interviewing this kid. I read a little bit about him. We are now talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit, Brayden Wood. What's going on, Brayden?
How we doing?
We are good, my friend. How are you and your family doing with this pandemic?
We've been doing well. It was a little tough in the beginning. We had two of my family members actually got the virus, so we're a little scared at first, but they got through it, and we're getting through it too. So we're doing well. We're in Aspen right now, kind of a little break from all the craziness that's been happening. So it's been nice.
Skiing? Are you skiing right now?
No, we're just up here, kind of as a nice little family getaway.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome. I love Aspen, Colorado. It's beautiful over there, especially in the wintertime. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's the best.
As you guys know, we are talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood. So, Brayden, why don't you tell us a little bit about Kansas State football, why you decided to declare in going to Kansas State?
For me, it was really kind of a family-based commit. Their coaching staff up there is second to none. Coach Kleiman first offered me, I think it was a winter morning, around 9 a.m. It was during one of my off periods at school. And, first 15 minutes of ball offered me, and then the rest were just talking about kind of small world stuff, just kind of life. And just after, I kind of knew something was kind of special there, because not a lot of colleges, head coaches at least, have spent an hour or hour and a half of their day, talking to you or kind of, talking about life other than ball. So I kind of really started off the relationship at K-State. And, Colin Klein, he's kind of my main recruiter since he kind of recruits the area of Colorado. We've kind of, the relationship's always been there since my freshman year. Their recruiting process is a little different than others. They're kind of really strict on kind of who they look at and who they offer. They offer, I'm pretty sure, if not, probably they hold the least amount of offers at least given out in the Big 12. So when they offer you, it's a solid offer, and it's there. It's not going to go away. And especially the really thing that kind of stood out, especially with the pandemic, like we were just talking about, they were on me constantly, and it wasn't just one coach. I had, the defensive coordinator, safeties coach, D-line coach, the D-tackle and D-ends coach, of course, Colin Klein's been talking to me, the recruiting coordinators, and, I've always, talked once a week with Coach Klein, the head coach. So just the relationship, that's just built up with them is just in and on, and it hasn't, touched what any other school's done. And that was kind of one of the major factors of my commitment there, was just I felt comfortable. I connected with so many of them on a whole nother level. It was just kind of one of those gut things, And Manhattan, Kansas is, it's a special place. Top 5 college town, great area to be at. At their second, I think, most alumni, basis is Denver. So I've had a lot of, my dad's friends, my friend's dad, just saying so many good things about Manhattan, Kansas, and how they loved and enjoyed, their college experience at Kansas State. And then another kind of funny thing is my youth quarterback, Jake Rubley. We played football since the 5th grade. We knew each other way before that. He was one of the first commits to Kansas State. He was a really highly recruit, had a bunch of SEC, ACC, Big 12 offers. And, he kind of pointed it out kind of straight to me. He was like, you're not going to find a better place than Manhattan, Kansas. A lot of other schools may have, better facilities, better uniforms, and it comes down to that. That's not where you're going to school for. Their business program's really good, and that I'm going to try to major in is business and communications. Their business program's really ranked up there. So just Manhattan, Kansas, is a special place, and just can't wait to get back up there.
You are recruited by Kansas State, who's kind of that counterculture of the Big 12. Big 12 always known for the flashy offensive teams for the most part, but Kansas State's always been more known for defense and especially special teams. When Bill Snyder was there, it seemed like they led the nation in block kicks every year. What did that factor into your decision as a defensive lineman? And also, how do you think playing against the levels of those offenses, especially with Oklahoma and Texas and schools like that, could help grow your game as a defensive lineman?
I've always been the type of kid, go against the best competition. I never shy away from, going against the biggest kid or the best kid. Every week when I play my high school, I kind of watch the tape to see who their best lineman is. So I go against them, make sure I stay on them, better myself and, better my team, because when I'm beating down, a Division I kid or, a kid's best lineman, our defensive line would have a great day, just learn about the weaker guys. But, Big 12, one of the best conferences, the first, if not, second. Of course, powerhouses like, Texas and Oklahoma. Again, I'm never going to shy away from competition. That's another huge reason why I selected Kansas State, is because, they're in the best conference. They're day in and day out, they're going against the best teams every week. And I'm excited for them. Their D linemen they're a 4-3 team, and, they're ball to wall going crazy every play. They're attacking the ball. They're rushing every play. They're not one of the teams that scheme. You're going to slant this way and get double teamed by these two guys, so the linebackers can come in plays. They're a team that, treat their D linemen right. They're going to get them into position, make tackles for losses, make sacks, be big contributors to the team. Like you said, their defense has been, their stronghold for the last couple of years, especially when they knocked off one of the best, passing offenses, just offenses in general as Oklahoma. How they were kind of building something special, being that staff's first year with Coach Kleiman and all them. So I really think they're putting together something special, kind of have that blue-collar mentality of we're going to, hit you harder than you've ever been hit before. They may hit you back, but we're going to get back up and keep doing it every single play.
We are talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood. Now, Brayden, you were a top recruit, and you look at your game and really your style of game, and that's getting to the quarterback. Could you tell the fans a little bit about your style of game and what makes you tick as a defensive lineman?
For me, it was actually kind of a funny story. I was a running back and linebacker growing up playing youth ball. What kind of really switched me to a defensive lineman was around 7th or 8th grade for me. I was trying to get that growth spurt, kind of putting on the weight. I moved to fullback. I was probably maybe like 6'1", 200 pounds as an 8th grader. So I was kind of getting moved around all over the place, trying to find, that certain spot for me. And then one of my mentors, one of my, biggest people I look up to is Jason White, my second dad. He moved me down to the defensive line, and that's when I really kind of started, falling in love with that. Like, it was crazy the year I had, and that was the year that I kind of fell in love with football, and that I knew that was going to be my sport going on to high school. For me, and then when I went to high school, I was kind of back at my playing both, going in the spring with the JV, and then I got moved up to the varsity, and then I got put on the D line. It was around like week 4 or something like that. I finally got the starting position at nose guard, and I was only maybe a 6'2", 220 guy, going against kids that are like double my size. And I always kind of treat my game I'm the type of kid that my motor's out the roof. The thing about my high school is we're in the top division in Colorado, which is 5A football. And we have about maybe 55, 60 kids when the team, we have over 120 plus kids on their roster. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of depth, and that's how we train in the off season always, as there's no back. My sophomore and junior year, I didn't leave the field for a single on defense, and majority of the snaps on offense. I was a two-way player both my sophomore and junior year. A big thing about my play is I want to out hustle and outwork the guy in front of me. There's no way that I kind of have to switch my mind when I turn it on before game time. Is like whoever's in front of me, they're not going to beat me a single time this game. I have that mentality, weekend out, and it's kind of been it's a lifestyle. If I'm honest with you, that's kind of how I've been raised. It's just win the day. But with me, another big thing about my game is I think I'm very, I would say, technical and football smart, if that makes any sense. Like, I'll watch about maybe 6 to 7 hours of film each week on the other teams we're playing, and I'm like Google Sheets or Google slides on what the majority of the plays they run, what formation, what percentage is run, pass, play action, option, like what two routes are, what their go-to runs are, what's the percentage of them passing the ball or running the ball on certain downs, which helps my game a ton. Like I said, we're not a heavily, in-depth team. Like, we have our ones and twos, but if someone goes down, there's kind of no one to fall back on. So we have to be, that type of team, and which why we've had so much success in the past years. We've made, Elite Eight, Final Four runs in the past 3 years just because of that.
Talk about the differences technique-wise and also coaching emphasis points-wise that your coaches have told you between playing an inside offensive lineman position and being on the edge as an outside defensive lineman.
So for me, a lot of the time, when we're going against a running team, they'll put me the 3 technique, because at least in the past years we've had some pretty good linebackers. So they'll put me the 3 technique to make sure they're not running the ball on us. Because especially if you look at my highlights, there's a lot of plays on 3rd and 1, even in 4th, or like the offensive line's tired. I can tell. I'll go ahead and switch to that guy that looks gassed or doesn't look like he wants to be on the field no more. I'll switch to that guy. I'll drive him off the line about 2 or 3 yards and make a tackle for loss, or either a turnover or a huge 4th down stop. And a lot for me, for those long kind of 3rd down or even 2nd down situations, I'll move to the edge and kind of use my strength, because I'll just use this bull rush and bully the guy in front of me to kind of get away and make the sack. So, which this year I kind of experienced a lot more. I think last year I had more sacks. I don't know. But this year they had to slide the guard and tackle, and they had to make sure the running back was tipping me before he got out of the route, or the running back was just staying in and blocking me. Mix it around to get them out, because we run a 4 package when we kind of are in those like 3rd and long or 2nd and long situations. So I'll be, I'll kind of cruising around. I'll kind of be a stand-up, kind of outside linebacker, up to the nose guard to make sure those 3 guards are on me. So we'll send blitzes and we'll get the linebacker kind of wide open. But the pass rush first, which I kind of set myself on. I think I played 4 to the Division I linemen this year that have, multiple offers are already committed to, big time D1 school. Obviously going to there, it's kind of my go-to thing is you kind of have to set up a move, because, they're that highly skilled, they've been recognized, getting offers or committed to a college. I can't just bull rush, use my strength. So I kind of have to, kind of finesse and kind of sugar step and get around them, which I think is kind of a huge emphasis this year, because there's not going to be a lot of, good tackles or, kind of D1 guys in, I guess, on our conference or in our schedule this year. So if I can get that, stuff down and, going on to the next level, I think that's going to put me a step ahead of everybody that at least that I'm going into, or kind of give me the position to kind of run for that starting spot my freshman year.
We are talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood. Now, Brayden, when did you know that you were going to be able to play Division I football? When did you know you had that kind of talent where you can compete with some of the best players in the country?
It started out, my 8th year. I played in kind of an All-American game in USA. And then after that year, I was going into high school, and I was still playing football, baseball, and basketball. I was a 3-sport athlete going in. And then that summer, kind of had a huge decision. Rather, I'll kind of, going to stick with baseball, stick with basketball, or stick with football. Because baseball has a huge season in the summer, or am I going to play summer basketball, or am I just going to stick with the summer workouts and summer practices with football? And that I kind of sat down with my parents and I kind of just talked about it. He's like, what sport do you think I'll have the most success at? And we decided football. And I'm very glad we did that. Because I dropped the baseball and basketball going into my freshman year, and then stuck with football. So this went into our kind of spring ball, which is our, like, right as we get out of school, we're starting out right back to our spring ball scrimmages. And then so, like I said, I went to JV away and moved me up to varsity. And then, like I said earlier, like week 4, we're playing against Columbine, which is known for having huge linemen. And I was kind of not the built kid I was right now, but I was a little scrawny, kind of scrappy kid. And I was going against a D1 guard that had 20 plus offers, and then I was going against like a 6'6", 300-pound guy that was committed to Hawaii. And that's when I kind of knew that game kind of clicked for me. It was like, well, if I can just do this and make a double team and not get pushed back by 2 guys that triple my weight, then I'll kind of be in a good position. We ended up losing the game by a touchdown, but probably one of the most memorable games of my life because I kind of knew like this was going to be my sport going forward because, you know, everybody has their doubts about, you know, what sport is going to be their sport, you know. But that game kind of turned it on for me. Definitely knew that something special was there. So I continued to play throughout the whole year. I was a starting nose tackle, 3 technique, and just depending on, you know, who's hurt, who's not. And then at the end of the year, I ended up picking up 3 offers from Power 5 schools, which kind of set off my recruiting process from there going into my sophomore year. And I kind of knew, like, my first offer was Texas Tech, and once I kind of got it from there, it kind of got the ball rolling, and I was kind of thinking to myself, and I was sitting down with my trainer, it was like, this could be a future for me. This could be something that can take me to somewhere very special and provide many, many doors that could be opened up for me. So I really kind of focused on that off season going into my sophomore year. You know, I was 6 days a week working out once or twice a day, you know, speed work, strength work, you know, getting on a diet, you know, forming myself into, you know, that guy that can, you know, be that type of guy. You know, I was ranked number 1 in the Colorado freshman and sophomore year. You know, I had a lot of heat on me. Got that kind of factor in my sophomore year. It kind of really jumped off for me. And then from my sophomore year on, gained 15 plus offers. And that's when I kind of knew, like, this is going to be, you know, the sport for me, you know. And just the memories and kind of the brother that I've created with football, I think it's going to be a lifelong, you know, lesson and journey for me that I'll never trade for anything in the world.
When you were growing up playing football, were there any other positions you played outside of defensive lineman? And if so, which one was your favorite one to play outside of defensive lineman?
Oh, 100% running backs. It was, I remember playing my little league team. And then it was just always funny because we played this team called, and every time I ran the ball, I would like truck 2 or 3 kids over. I remember I popped a guy's tooth out, gave a kid a concussion, and there were parents on the sideline yelling at, like, get this kid out. Like, this kid's not in the 2nd grade. Like, he can't be doing this. And it's so funny because I remember, like, vivid stories. This is a true story. I can't make this up, but I'm in like the 3rd or 4th grade, and you know how like Little League has weigh-ins, so, you know, a patch or a double patch, and you know I've always been a big kid. You know, I was always maybe like 3 to 4 inches taller than everybody. So, you know, everybody thought, you know, oh, he's just old, or oh, he got held back. So I weighed in, you know, at our usual weigh-ins, and you know, like 2 days before, like I would just try to like skeet down as much weight as possible. Like my favorite like snacks were like ice cubes and like watermelon, and you know I would just eat that all day. And my parents were like, "What are you doing? Like, you have dinner right here." It's like I was like, "Mom, I gotta make weigh-ins." And so we got weighed in. I was like 2 pounds under, so it was huge, not a patch, didn't have to play line. So excited. And like 2 weeks go by, and we were about to like go against like our rivals, and I can't make this up. I get pulled out of class by like just like a student aide or something like that. Walk down to the office. I get put in kind of this like meeting room, and I got 2 like cops like walk into the kind of little room, and I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and I'm scared as can be. Like I'm shaking. I'm getting all red. This is like one of my most memorable memories. The cops walk in and they're like, "Are your parents starving you?" And I take out my lunch and I had McDonald's. I think it was like a McDonald's burger and lunch. And I lifted up my shirt and I was like, "Does it look like I'm getting starved?" And they were like, "You're fine." And they walk out within like 2 minutes, and then 3 weeks go by, and we're in like our championship. the same. It was a girl cop and a guy cop. The girl cop walks in, and he's like, I was like, "Am I in trouble again? Like, what did I do?" And I was like. And I lifted up my shirt again, and I was like, "Does it really look like I'm starved?" And she was like, "Okay, I believe you." And then never been bothered with again.
Well, I'll tell you this: you don't look like you're getting starved. That's for sure.
No, not anymore.
You're a big dude. I mean, every single video and every single picture I saw, you're a pretty big dude. We are talking to Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood. I'm a big NFL fan, and I've seen a lot of NFL linemen, defensive linemen that have been drafted in the last couple of years, and a lot of them, like Myles Garrett, who everybody was talking about. He was a big recruit. It took him a little while to develop his skills in college, but when he did, he dominated college football. When you look at your style of game, do you see your style moving up to the NFL?
100%. Because my main thing is, if you look like a guy like Aaron Donald, I think he was like a very under recruited guy. Didn't grow much in college, but he kind of turned it on for himself. He's if not arguably the best defensive lineman in the NFL right now, being only 6 foot, 200 or he's either 295, 285, and has the six pack. It just really comes down to how much you kind of want to put in, and how much you kind of want to get to the level.
Brayden, in terms of influences when you were a kid, growing up, not the current NFL right now, but when you were growing up, is there any players that you watch, whether it was a defensive lineman or a running back, like you were saying earlier? Are there any other, who was your influence growing up and maybe even model your game around?
That's tough, I would say I have two kind of groups of people, especially my family, my uncles, my grandfather, football players. My father, Arizona State, my other, Illinois State, and my grandfather played at Colorado State. So they kind of set the tone kind of at an early age. And especially right now, I'm the only grandson from my grandfather that is, get to be a football player. None of the other, I think, 6 or 5 grandkids doesn't play football, and they're at the age where they can. They're stud lacrosse players, wrestlers, but I'm kind of carrying the legacy, at least for my family. So I kind of knew, kind of growing up, that this is kind of my thing that I could do. And then another one, I know you said no NFL players, but J.J. Watt is a huge guy.
Who was it, Brayden? I'm sorry, you went in and out. What was the guy?
J.J. Watt.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So my main thing is it's what he does, off the field and on the field. He's kind of the best of both worlds. He was I'm pretty sure he was a walk-on at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
He was Pete the boy to pay for his college, and so
he was also a tight end when he came into college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of had the same transition as me.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to play another position, got moved down. May not have liked it, but ended up turning out really well for him. And then, getting booed for being a first-round pick after, dominating his senior year, especially kind of like in the snap of a finger how, he shocked the world with his rookie year and being, defensive player of the year, all-pro, certain amount of times, Pro Bowl, everything. It just shows you that, anything could be, anything could snap. You may be doubted, hated on. you just be, not even that, but it just shows you how, how anything can happen.
I agree with you. And I'll tell you this, Brayden. I am going to follow your college career. I want you to call the show. I want to get you on the show more than numerous amount of times. I want to know your input of the Big 12 and your growth as a college football player. And then when you do get drafted, hopefully by my New York Jets, because we needed. I'll tell you this right now: we've needed a pass rusher for years, and we haven't had one since John Abraham. And now, getting to know you as a person, your personality, I would love for you to get drafted by the New York Jets. And I will be following your college career moving forward and I will be a big fan of yours. I love your intake and not only your personal, background of your high school career and some of the stories that you've told us, really your confidence, and there's no ego to you. You're just a very confident young man who is looking forward to the college season. So I'm looking forward to getting the opportunity to watch you play and develop as a college football player.
No, I'm really excited. That'll be a dream come true, and I really appreciate all the campers.
Absolutely. So, Brayden, why don't you tell the fans how they can follow you on social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at Bray, BRAY _Wood. Follow me on Instagram, Bray.Wood. That's about all the two socials I have.
And tell your family, tell your parents to keep feeding you, because whatever they're feeding you, you've turned out to be not only a dominant defensive lineman, one of the top recruits in the nation.
No, love it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Brayden, thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Really glad to be here.
Absolutely. Brayden Wood, ladies and gentlemen, Kansas State football defensive line recruit. Great interview.
Yeah, he was awesome. That was a great story he was telling about the starvation thing.
Absolutely. I mean, the kid has a great personality. You could tell that his parents really structured his life and his career as a football player. The academics is a very important aspect of who he is as a person, and he wants to be a big time business major. And you heard what he said. He went to Kansas State because of their business program. Right. It wasn't just their football team and the coaching; it was their academics. So you hear that from an athlete. A lot of athletes don't say that, even though they try to hide behind it. That they only went to those schools because they want to be an NFL player. He pretty much told you that he wants to get his business degree. He went to Kansas State because of business. Right. So, and one of the top business schools in the country. So,
yeah, you usually only hear coaches say stuff like that with how much academic prowess their school has in terms of everybody else. But hearing it from an athlete is definitely different, and especially with one that's just coming in this year, probably
top
17, 18 years old.
One of the top 5 defensive lineman recruits. Shout out to Jillian and Ricky for getting him online. And I'll tell you this right now, this kid, if what I've read about him, he was one of the top 3 star defensive line targets in the country. So that's saying a lot for the talented player that he is. And he does believe he's going to be an NFL player. And I hope that when he does become an NFL player, the Jets choose him to be their defensive lineman, because everything that I've read about the kid, he's got some strong motor, incredible hands, and he can get to the quarterback. So, and that's something you need from a defensive lineman, and something the Jets have been needing for since the last 20 years. I mean,
at least at the high school level, he did play both inside and outside too, which always helps, especially with the NFL becoming more versatile as it is, with the way defensive linemen have to be, and really a lot of players have to be, even offensive skill players.
Before we go, we were talking about dysfunctional franchises, and we do want to finish up the dysfunction of some of these franchises. We will get into the other topics tomorrow. I mean, I'm not tomorrow, Thursday for Below the Mic. Yep. We have a big show lined up for you guys. We have a couple of great guests that will be joining us on Thursday as well. I'd like to thank Jose Mota, the voice of the Los Angeles Angels, giving us some good insight, not only about baseball, about Angels baseball, and as the season is now looking like it's coming back. 16-game season. The players did agree to it, and ownership has agreed to it. It could be back as good as the middle of July. So I'm very excited about that. That's something that I wasn't expecting. And then also the great young defensive lineman from Kansas State, Brayden Wood, who gave us some good insight of his high school career and really his insight of where he sees himself in the future, not only as a college football player, but as an NFL football player. So gave us some good insight. But dysfunctional franchises. We did read some things that Carl said. He said the Oakland Raiders, the Edmonton Oilers. I agree. I think the Edmonton Oilers have not been a good franchise since the
80s, right?
early 80s. Late 70s. I mean, this is a franchise that practically gave away Mark Messier, gave away Wayne Gretzky, threw away Grant Fuhr, an organization that completely was a debacle. And really in the early 2000s, this is an organization that practically drafted top draft picks and pretty much sold them all away. And you can see what this franchise has done. They have a great player in Connor McDavid. Now they have to build around him, and hopefully they don't trade him away, which that organization has been doing for years and years and years. Throwing away players, top talented players, makes absolutely no sense the way the franchise has really gone forward. So
kind of like what you were saying, too, with the Orlando Magic. They had that one fluky finals run in the lockout shortened season, 05-06, when they lost to the Hurricanes, but that's really been it.
They've been a really bad franchise. Also, the Oakland Raiders, a franchise that has been absolutely horrendous since really the
21st century,
the 70s and the early 80s. Another organization that was one of the top organizations in the mid 70s. Right. You're talking about them, the Bears, we've talked the Steelers, the 49ers. This is an organization that has not done very, very well as far as drafting and really have been all over the place. They've had good teams over the years, bad coaching, bad ownership in Al Davis, and now his son's running the team. The Davis family has not been a very well-run and very dysfunctional organization because of the Davis family. So
yeah, you're seeing a lot of those teams that really they're trying to duplicate that same identity they had in the 70s and the 80s. You look at the teams like the Dolphins, teams like the Redskins.
Another bad organization.
Right, those
Dolphins,
two teams especially. I think really a lot of those teams they're trying to do what worked for them in their glory days when they don't realize the game has changed and they constantly make the same mistakes a lot of the time. The Raiders, especially with how many players they take chances on with off-field issues. I mean, it just seems like they never learn. It wasn't as come down on with when Pete Rozelle was commissioner. Now Roger Goodell's come on him, and all of a sudden these players have issues and they're always suspended, and they turn out to be bad.
Speaking of another organization, the Bengals being another organization that has been a bad organization. They've had winning seasons over the years, but a team that has never really won in the playoffs with Andy Dalton, and really this is an organization that hasn't won for many, many years. And they've been a dysfunctional organization for the NFL, but an organization that's drafted very, very well, and they have brought some good players to the NFL, and they have developed as superstars in the NFL. Another organization that I've talked about over the years is the Baltimore Orioles. A really bad organization, really poorly run. This is an organization that has not been good since really the early 90s and really the 80s. This is an organization that hasn't won. I don't remember the last time they won.
83 was their last
World
Series.
83. Yeah. I mean, this is an organization that hasn't won in over 30-some-odd years. So
it seems like they never develop pitching.
No. So another organization that needs to rebuild and figure out things. A terrible organization. So
while we're on football ones for a while, the Detroit Lions, I think, have to be in there too.
Yeah,
this is a team that has won one playoff game in the entire Super Bowl era. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they have to be on that list, I have them right below the Browns. I would say probably as the second most, but they've also had trouble with players having off-field issues, a lot of bad draft picks, a lot of bad coaching, and as a result, they waste a lot of their stars that they do get. Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, guys like that.
Another team that I would definitely look at in hockey is the Montreal Canadiens. This is an organization that have been a top organization, especially in the 50s and the 60s, with
all the great goalies they had, really.
The great goaltending, the great offense, Richard, who was one of the best offensive players of all time. And it really, when you talk about Carey Price, as great as Carey Price has been over the years, this is a dysfunctional organization that has not won, hasn't developed young players. And the last time they won, I don't remember the last time they won.
93, I think it was when they played the Wayne Gretzky LA Kings.
Yeah, so they're an organization that has not been a good organization, poorly run. And you talk about the Montreal Canadiens, one of the greatest hockey organizations of all time. And And this is a team that you could say how many championships and how many Stanley Cups they have won. They have not won. They've won one Stanley Cup in the last 20-some-odd years.
Right. A lot of those, again, also the original 6 era, too, so that inflates it. They've been well-run for the 70s and 80s and then up to the 90s, but since then, you're right. They're kind of like what I was saying with the Raiders. They're kind of stuck in trying to develop those players like their glory days, and I mean, they've evolved to an extent with certain players.
No, they haven't. They're a terrible organization.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
One of my good friends, Chris Higgins, played for the organization. Cam Masarek played for the organization. They're a poorly run organization that doesn't know how to develop players.
They've had stars, but you're right. They don't know how to develop players consistently, and that's a problem.
Another organization in hockey that have been a dysfunctional organization is the Toronto Maple Leafs, an organization that hasn't won forever. And you talk about players; they have some of the most talented players on this team right now. And John Tavares, they practically plied him away from the New York Islanders and stole him away. And then you have Austin Matthews, and you have all these great players on the team, and they still can't find a way to win. This is an organization that's poorly run. They have great coaching. They have a great GM. They decided to get rid of Lou Lamoriello. He goes to the Islanders, and he gets the Islanders into the playoffs the first year that he took over the team. This is just an organization that they've been a laughingstock, not only in the NHL, but in professional hockey. And the fact that guys like John Tavares decided to go to the organization and leave an organization that was a rebuilding organization that really has been more successful than the Maple Leafs have. And that's saying a lot when the Islanders organization have not been a good organization and poorly run. They're another organization that has not been a good organization in New York. Mm-hmm. So with the new ownership and Malkin and what they're doing and bringing in Barry Trotz, they've completely transitioned that organization. They're no longer a laughing stock in the NHL to the Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. And no matter how good and how talented they are a team. There are teams that are never going to win because they're poorly run from the top.
And it seems like, too, kind of like we were saying with the Knicks earlier, like you think free agents are going to go there all the time, and because it's Toronto, a lot of guys grew up there, and they never seem to get it because of that dysfunction, too. And as a result, they have certain star players that, again, never get help because of that. Look at what Phil Kessel had to deal with, Matt Sundin in the 90s, what he had to deal with, again, and they never could find goaltending either.
It is crazy, and there are a lot of other teams, and we can go through so many teams from so many sports. How about Cincinnati? How about the Cincinnati Reds? Mm-hmm. How bad have they been since really the early, mid-'90s? I mean, they have not been a good organization, poorly run. They haven't won in almost 30 years. And you talk about the talent, the Big Red Machine, and you talk about what they have done over the years with the talent that they had with the Pete Roses of the world and some of the players that we have seen, the great players that we've seen come in and out of that organization in the early 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And Paul O'Neill being one of them, he went to the Yankees and won a couple of titles with the Yankees. So this is an organization that has not won, a very badly, poorly run organization year in and year out. And finally, hopefully, they got something going for the organization.
I think the last time they won the World Series was in 1990, and I also think that was their last playoff win, too.
It's crazy. Win, It's crazy. They've been a really bad poorly run organization. It's almost 30 years since they've won. So, but there's so many trending. We can argue points in so many different teams, but those were probably 10 to 12 teams that I could put them on my list of terrible. And most of them, I will tell you, are from New York. So to say that 3 or even 4 of the top 20 from New York, it's saying a lot about New York sports. So it's all bad. That's all I'm going to say about New York sports. Anyways, that's it for our show, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank Jose Mota, the voice of the Angels, for joining us early in the show. I'd like to thank Kansas State football defensive lineman recruit Brayden Wood. Thank you for your intake of your high school career and where you see yourself in the future, not only in college football but the NFL. And CJ for joining us, all the different people that have called our show. Thank you for calling the show. Stay tuned for Thursday and some of our new shows that are going to be coming to our network. And by the way, shout out to the Big Guy Sports Show. And Ryan will be back on Thursday. I know everybody keeps asking me, where is Ryan? Ryan was off on Thursday. He was off on Monday. He will be back on Thursday with the Morning Boy. So I know everybody's been asking me about Ryan. Ryan will be back. So stay tuned for that. That's it for our show. We'll be back on Thursday for Below the Mic. Until then, this is Errol Marks and Speedy Dan Petey saying good night. We'll talk to you then. Good night, everybody.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.